As Lenny Copeland traversed the vibrant streets of Hope's Gate, he blended seamlessly into the bustling crowd. People went about their lives oblivious to the internal struggles that others might be grappling with. Lenny meandered down the sidewalk, his gaze fixed on the ground, avoiding eye contact with the passers-by. He found solace in the simplicity of solitude, navigating through the ebb and flow of the city's pulse without the complications of interaction. Lenny had spent the majority of his life alone, and the few notable relationships he'd had were fleeting. Loneliness occasionally crept in, but Lenny always managed to push it away, resolute in his choice to navigate the craziness of his life alone. He made sure that his brief encounters with others were never enough to disrupt the already delicate balance. Lost in his contemplations, Lenny's routine was unexpectedly disrupted. A peculiar hush descended upon his surroundings, and as he looked up, he discovered that the familiar backdrop of life had dissolved. The once lively streets now lay empty, devoid of pedestrians and the hum of city activity. Hope's Gate, now plunged into a profound silence, seemed to have frozen in time. This abrupt shift signaled Lenny's descent into what he termed the dead place, a realm mirroring the ordinary world but cloaked in desolation. The hollowness of the cityscape stretched endlessly before him. This strange transition had become customary for Lenny, a sporadic departure into a vacant reality where he remained utterly alone, cut off from the vibrance of everyday life. His lack of control over these shifts added a frustrating layer to Lenny's already complex relationship with the liminal realm.
Ugh, not again,
Lenny groaned. Finding himself enveloped again in the peculiar emptiness, he aimlessly roamed the desolate streets. The only thing he could do. The absolute silence was both a blessing and a curse. No cacophony of urban life, but still an unsettling void that accentuated his isolation. In this desolate realm, Lenny was accustomed to the emptiness, having traversed it many times before. Sometimes he would even allow himself to have fun with it, doing things he could otherwise never do. Today, however, a sudden shift in the stillness caught his attention. Something was different. It was as if the world around him anticipated what was about to happen. In the distance, Lenny glimpsed a man emerging from around a street corner. The unexpected presence of another living being in this liminal world struck him with a sense of bewilderment. The two men studied each other cautiously as they approached. Lenny quickly realized the other man was just as surprised as he was. Lenny hesitated, grappling with the uncertainty of this meeting. His voice echoed through the vacant spaces as he greeted the other man.
Hey there, friend,
he said.
Hi,
said the other. He looked to be in his 30s, a bit younger than Lenny, and he was somewhat disheveled, though he carried himself with an air of confidence, something Lenny had never known himself. After a brief awkward silence, Lenny decided there was no point in beating around the bush.
I'm not used to seeing other people walking around in here,
he said, sounding more haughty than he intended to.
Me neither, really,
said the stranger.
I'm Lenny.
Daniel,
responded the other man.
I'm looking for my wife, Claire.
Lenny was perplexed.
Sorry, buddy, I don't think there's anybody else in here but us.
Wait, what do you mean in here?
Lenny had assumed that Daniel, like himself, understood at least the nature of this place, but that now seemed less likely. He wondered how Daniel could possibly be so unaware.
What do you mean, what do I mean? The dead place, where we're at right now. I stumble into this crazy place a couple times a week lately. I get pulled in here from the real world, where all the people are.
In the midst of their discussion, a revelation struck Daniel, and a mix of emotions washed over him.
Hey,
said Lenny.
Are you okay?
The real world,
said Daniel. His eyes widened as he finally started coming to his senses.
Oh my God.
Lenny, still confused, asked,
What's the matter?
Daniel's reality was shaken.
I'm dreaming,
he said, as if giving himself confirmation.
I remember everything.
Dreaming?
Lenny asked with a half smile.
This ain't a dream, pal. Trust me.
There was a man.
Daniel urgently blurted out.
Zebediah. He did something to me.
Daniel put his face in his hands, angry with himself for what he allowed to happen to him.
He trapped me here, screwed up my head. Damn it.
Lenny was absolutely baffled at this point.
I am so confused right now.
He said.
You're in here because you're dreaming?
Yes,
Responded Daniel.
which unfortunately means you're a figment of my imagination. Or something.
Listen, pal, I'm a lot of things, but I'm no figment.
Lenny gripped Daniel's shoulder and gave him a gentle shake.
I can see how discombobulated you are at the moment, but I promise you, I'm a real guy.
He could see that Daniel was attempting to put it all together.
You're one of only 2 people I've seen here.
Lenny continued.
The other was this weird little girl.
Daniel quickly perked up.
What did she look like?
I don't know. Pink overalls? Brown hair?
In a braid?
Yeah.
Did she say anything?
She told me to follow some bird, but I haven't seen it.
As if on cue, a finch fluttered to a stop on the curb next to Lenny.
You mean that bird?
Asked Daniel with a smile.
She told me the same thing. I thought it was leading me to Claire, but it brought me here to you.
Lenny was at a complete loss. He thought he was beginning to understand this place, but now realized he had only scratched the surface.
What the?
In that moment, Daniel heard the unmistakable voice of his beloved wife. She sounded so close he almost expected to see her standing there on the street.
Daniel, can you hear me?
Claire!
He exclaimed. Looking back at Lenny, he said,
I have to go. I have to wake up.
He took a step back, and his gaze fell again to the finch. Daniel smiled.
It did lead me to Claire.
With that, he began to fade, following Claire's voice back to the waking world.
Wait!
Lenny urgently called after him.
Find Lenny Copeland! Lenny Copeland!
The hospital room welcomed Daniel back to consciousness as he slowly opened his eyes. Claire's face was the first thing he saw, just inches above his own. Her expression changed from concern to a deep elation, and she began to cry. Relief and joy surged through Daniel as he embraced her. They held each other in silence as tightly as they could, while internally, Daniel grappled with the fragments of his dreams and the enigmatic echoes of the liminal space. Remembering well the name, Lenny Copeland. In the desolate liminal space, Lenny's wandering, which was a little less aimless now thanks to the finch, led him into the heart of the city. The bird descended upon a spot in the street, its wings fluttering in a rhythm that seemed to call Lenny closer. As he approached, a subtle glow emanated from the ground beneath the bird. Sparks of light rose into the air in front of Lenny and began to swirl. He cautiously approached the ethereal light, attempting to touch it, but an invisible force repelled him. An opening appeared at the center of the swirling sparks and expanded, revealing a luminous portal. It hung suspended like a window to an alternate reality. Through its transparent surface, a very different version of this city street lay before Lenny. On the other side of the portal, the sky was black with looming clouds, and to Lenny's horror, the street was filled with monsters, actual monsters, of all shapes and sizes, some on 4 legs, some on 2, some that slithered across the pavement like snakes, some that flew with enormous bat wings. Others seemed to be in spiritual form, dark shadows hovering about. Caught between terror and morbid fascination, Lenny's breath hitched. One of the demonic entities looked as if it could have once been human, but now carried the appearance of a man long dead and decayed. Its eyes cast a reddish glow in the darkness, the being possessed by infernal forces. As it shuffled slowly into view near the portal, it turned and locked eyes with Lenny. The creature immediately rerouted its path, glaring with an unholy fervor as it began to climb through the portal, moving with malicious purpose. Lenny staggered backward, his heart pounding in his chest. Panic coursed through him as he realized the other side of the portal wasn't just a menacing reflection. It was a reality where he was prey to unspeakable horrors. The thing walked toward Lenny with outstretched arms, every grotesque detail illuminated on this side of the portal. Just as he turned to sprint away in terror, Lenny suddenly found himself forced back into the familiar, mundane reality of the ordinary world. Standing, on the very same city street. The abrupt transition left him disoriented, and an oncoming car screeched to a stop just inches from him. Lenny had never been so happy to hear someone shouting at him and cursing him for being in the way. Shaking off the confusion, he fled the scene, desperately concealing his face from the curious gazes of onlookers, some of whom had surely seen him appearing out of thin air. As Lenny struggled with what he had experienced in the dead place, he wondered about the Finch, questioning why it had shown him the portal and worrying about what it all meant. He thought of Daniel and the mysterious connection between the dream world and the desolate liminal plane. The boundaries between these realities had blurred, leaving Lenny to ponder his purpose in all of this. And for the first time in his adult life, he found himself afraid to be alone.